All right, today we are diving into a really powerful story about a leadership crisis taken from an ancient text. It's a story all about what happens when a brand new society starts to lose its way, and one leader has to stand up and confront his own people to try and save them. And this really is the core question, isn't it? Imagine this. A visionary founder builds a nation on these incredibly strong principles. But then, after he's gone, the very next generation starts to drift. And that's the massive challenge staring our guy, Jacob, right in the face. A problem that, honestly, echoes throughout all of history. So here's how we're going to break this down. We'll start with the heavy burden Jacob inherits. Then we'll get into his direct, fiery confrontation with his people. After that, we'll explore a really complex parable he uses to teach them, witness a dramatic test of his faith, and finally, we'll wrap up with his last, really poignant words. Okay, so let's jump in. Our story kicks off with Jacob, who's just been handed the spiritual leadership of his people, the Nephites. This happens right after the death of his older brother Nephi, who was, a total legend. To set the scene, we're about 55 years after their ancestors fled Jerusalem. The founding generation, they're passing away. Nephi, their king, their protector, their spiritual guide, is now gone. So Jacob is the guy now. He's the custodian of their sacred history and their moral compass. But he's up against a new generation that never saw the original struggles. And well, they're starting to forget. And this is the heart of the problem. The society that was built on faith and unity is starting to show cracks. People are getting obsessed with money, they're becoming arrogant, and their morals are slipping. Jacob feels this immense, crushing weight on his shoulders, convinced that if he doesn't speak out, their sins are going to be on his head. But Jacob doesn't just sit back and watch it all fall apart. No way. He takes this thing head on. Commanded by God, he marches right into their most sacred space, the temple, to deliver a sermon that is both absolutely fiery and just heartbreaking. He calls them out on two massive sins. First up, pride, completely fueled by their new wealth. They're chasing gold and silver and looking down on the poor. And then he hits them with what he calls a grosser crime, immorality. You can just feel the emotion pouring out of Jacob here. This isn't some detached critic. He's a leader who is genuinely pained by what's happening, and he is begging his people to turn back before it's too late. And then he does something absolutely brilliant, and frankly, savage. He compares his own people to their sworn enemies, the Lamanites. And he points out that the Lamanite men are actually more righteous and loving in their family life. I mean, what a shocking comparison. He uses it to force his people to see just how deep their own hypocrisy runs. Okay, so after that incredibly intense sermon, Jacob completely switches gears. He moves from that direct, in-your-face rebuke to telling a powerful, sweeping story, a parable, an allegory, about a vineyard, and he uses it to explain God's long-suffering relationship with his people. So, what's an allegory? It's basically a story where everything is a symbol for something deeper. In this case, the vineyard is the world. The master of the vineyard is God. And the olive trees, they represent his people. The story plays out in these four main stages. It's a cycle of decay, and then these frantic attempts at restoration. The master's main tree starts to go bad, so he tries grafting in wild branches to save it. But eventually, the whole vineyard goes south. Everything becomes corrupt. The story ends with this one last, massive, all-hands-on-deck effort to save it. It's a story of repeated failure, yeah, but also of a relentless, patient love that just refuses to give up. And this line right here, this is the gut punch of the whole story. The master of the vineyard weeps, looking over the failure of his trees. It's this moment of pure, divine sorrow that really drives home the pain caused by the people's choices. So after the direct sermon in the big parable, the conflict gets boiled down and personified in one guy. A man named Sherem shows up, and he represents a direct challenge to absolutely everything Jacob stands for. And this guy, Sherem, is no pushover. The text says he's learned, has a perfect knowledge of the language, and he uses flattery and really powerful speeches to win people over. His core message is a total teardown of Jacob's teachings. He preaches there is no Christ and that Jacob is leading everyone astray. Sherem doesn't just disagree. He goes right after Jacob, face to face, and accuses him of blasphemy. He frames Jacob's faith in a future Messiah as some unknowable fantasy, a perversion of their law. It's the classic showdown, right? Faith in what you can't see versus a demand for cold, hard proof. So the confrontation escalates. Jacob counters all of Sherem's arguments with scripture and his own testimony. So Sherem plays his trump card. He demands a sign, a miracle. He's basically saying, all right, if your God is real, prove it. Right here, right now. And this is the moment everything changes. Jacob, instead of trying to perform some miracle, just turns it over to God, saying it's in his hands. In that instant, bam, divine power strikes Sherem and he just collapses to the ground. He demanded a sign, and boy, did he get one. Just not the way he expected. A dying Sherem gathers the people for one last speech. And it is a bombshell of a confession. He admits he was deceived by the devil, he confesses that Christ is real, and he says he's terrified he's committed a sin that can't be forgiven. Then, after he speaks, he dies. Just like that, the ideological battle, it's over. So, the dissenter is gone. Where does this leave Jacob and his people? This last section covers the aftermath, and we get to hear Jacob reflect on his life as he gets ready to pass on the sacred records to the next generation. Well, the effect is immediate. It's like a switch being flipped. With the main source of contention gone and his ideology publicly renounced, peace just rolls back in. The people turn back to their scriptures, and Jacob's leadership is completely vindicated.
But, and this is so important, the story doesn't just end with a simple happily ever after. This quote right here shows the incredible human cost of leadership. When Jacob looks back in his life, his tone is just deeply melancholic. He calls his people lonesome and solemn, wanderers who did mourn out our days. So even with all his victories, the constant battle took a heavy, heavy toll.
And that is what this whole story leaves us with, this huge, lingering question. The Book of Jacob isn't just an ancient religious text. It's a case study in the fight to hold on to your principles. It asks us, how does any society or family or even just one person hold on to their core values when the world is constantly pushing us towards pride, wealth, and compromise? It's a timeless challenge.